Brought to you by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast equipment rentals in Brooklyn, New York. JMRNY.com. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and joining me via Zoom today, he is the executive director of the Blackbird Film Festival, Mr. Sam Avery. Welcome, Sam.
Hello, Jason. Great to be here with you. I really appreciate you having me on and talking about Blackbird. This is exciting.
Yeah, you know, your festival looked interesting to me. So we're in the process right now. We have a project we're submitting to festivals, and I think somebody I knew had either been to Blackbird or submitted there. Looked like I liked the mission behind the fest, and we always try to highlight film festivals we think would be good for creators and talk to people to give them like a sense of what it would take to be in that festival or see if their project's right for it, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to talk more about the festival. But first, I want to talk to you about you. So, how did you get into the whole festival game and show business and all that jazz? What is your origin story?
I'm a filmmaker myself, and I do it because I enjoy it. Right, I have this kind of creative bug that needs to come out, and I like love to get behind the camera, love to write out scripts, and so I always find myself kind of getting into these small little film projects. And of course, the next step when they're done is to go out and submit them to festivals. Not to land some sort of massive distribution deal or whatever. Not that I'm saying that's going to happen, but no, to be a part of the community and to get your films out there, and then of course show it to other filmmakers, and then you can kind of have that experience. And so, as an indie filmmaker, kind of doing the local regional film festival circuit and really enjoying myself, I got to meet a variety of other people, and there were festivals that were doing it right, and I really enjoyed that. And then found that there were a lot of festivals, especially locally here in upstate New York, that it was just kind of a gap, right? A real gap in the experience. What's got me to start thinking like, well, what could we do? How could we maybe, make this kind of fill in the holes, pick and choose some of the great things we see from other festivals and combine them together and see what we could do. And so that's really where Blackbird kind of has its birth, right? That's where it comes from, is this idea that like maybe we could put some of these parts that work together and see if maybe we can kind of foster this community of filmmakers and artists and creators and kind of, make it happen here at home, here at our home base of Cortland, New York.
How long has the festival been in operation at this point?
This will be our 7th season in 2021. And it's the festival's taken on a variety of different shapes. I'm really happy to say that it's grown, almost doubled every single year since we started back in 2015. And it's been amazing to watch. Obviously, COVID threw a real wrench in our plans, but which has kind of forced us to reinvent a lot of things in a good way, though. Because sometimes I think we were almost getting into a little bit of a rut, doing the same thing every year and like getting better at it. But I think we almost needed a pandemic, maybe, to kind of say like, well, let's try some new things like drive-in screenings and live music and craft fairs and this kind of stuff. So yeah, 2021's looking very, very different from our previous years, but it's our 7th season and we're looking forward to it.
In terms of the festival itself, like, do you guys have a mandate, or do you have sort of a credo that you go by? Like, what kind of films work for you? Like, what's a good Blackbird film, in other words?
A good Blackbird film. I will say that we cater towards short films more so. And so I would say, in terms of a length, and it's hard to say because, the films go through a pretty grueling review process. And, whatever comes out on the other side is what's being considered. And so that might be a 1-minute micro short. It may be a 40-minute extended narrative. It may be a 2-hour feature. It really depends. But what we find tends to make it through more successfully, from start to finish, are the like 10 to 15-minute short films. Those tend to pack a lot of a big punch in a short amount of time. And that's really what we specialize in programming. It's also what's mostly submitted. I'd say it's our biggest category, is that between 10 to 15 minute short thing that are submitted. Beyond that, one of the other big credos or commitments we have, we ensure that our lineup of films is at least made up of 50% films made by women. Um, that was a decision we made back in 2018. And it was really, just kind of to kind of comment on it and take a step back, especially when the Me Too movement was kind of in full force, to step back and reassess if we're going to do this, let's take a look and see, who's being submitted, who's being represented, and pay a little bit more attention to that. And so we made the commitment to ensure that our lineup was at least 50% made by women. And since that time, I mean, it's just been phenomenal. It's interesting to kind of add these considerations into it. Not that it adds any sort of challenge, but again, it's another level of, oh, let's think a little bit more about this. And I would say beyond that, the only other thing that I guess I'm proud of is that we don't curate the selections. I would say of the films that we screen, which are typically approximately around 100 each season, I would say 95 of them come specifically from the submission pool, meaning that if there is no going to other festivals and recruiting films, there's no reaching out or asking this. It comes purely from the films that are submitted and that go through the review process, which I've come to learn kind of over the years, talking with other festivals, that that really isn't the case. There's a lot of curation going on, which again is one way. It's an awesome way to do it, but it's not the way the Blackbird does it. We really wholeheartedly rely on our multiple teams of judges to go through every single film and select them that way.
Besides the kind of 50-50 gender equality thing, do you guys have, like, is there a genre or a style or anything that exemplifies a Blackbird movie? Like, do you guys, is it avant-garde? Is it like, is there something in that, like in like, if you're, say, a Tim Burton-esque film maker, or you're a, you want to make Walt Disney films, like, is there that kind of bent to it, or is it really kind of more across the board eclectic?
I want to say that there's something, but as I think back over the years, I feel as if we have included all types of films. So we have had, the avant-garde, abstract, experimental blocks. We have had, blocks based solely on films that deal with dance. We've had films, blocks based on horror, slasher, comedy, romance, death. I mean, it's just, the covers the gamut. And as you say, one of the at our final stage, our third stage of the review process, we do have this kind of grueling thematic phase of programming, right? And so any films that finally make it to that final stage are then coded thematically based on and we essentially, our programmers come up with all these various thematic blocks, and usually there's usually like 50 plus of these. All the films that make it to the final round are categorized into these thematic blocks, and then it becomes the process to whittle that down, all the these 50 plus thematic blocks, down to essentially like 10 to 12 that we that are the strongest, that the films communicate well with one another. I will say that I've been to festivals before where the thematic block approach is not done. That sometimes there's been festivals I've gone to that they categorize films alphabetically, and so that's how they screen. And it's just, again, that was one of the things kind of when we were starting out Blackbird, that was an important aspect to maintain, that the films, a film in itself needs to communicate with the other films that are in the block, not only to make that film stronger, but also to make the experience of the attendees, also connect with all the material and take away at the end of that particular 70-minute screening block kind of a cohesive message that all these films are trying to communicate, and kind of as a collective together they can. And so the thematic programming is definitely something I'm very proud of for Blackbird, and I think that it resonates when people attend the festival and get to see these films juxtaposed next to one another. I think it's kind of a special thing.
It's like making a really good mixtape, like trying to get the thing to blend together.
Yes.
But you guys, I think what I'm hearing is that you guys look at the films first and see how they organically fall into these themes rather than, hey, we're going to do these 10 themes and find the films that fit in that.
That is exactly it. And, I'm sure it would be easier. I know that there are festivals out there that put out a call for, hey, we're looking for films on the, environmental films or whatever. We don't do that. And I will say that while it is a tremendous, tremendous amount of work, it's also incredibly satisfying to allow the films to kind of thematically fall where they will. Because every season when we get to that final stage, the thematic blocks that come out of this, it's like, oh wow, like I cannot believe all these films that talk about this particular issue or that particular issue. And then it becomes this really fun process of trying to mix and match them in a way that something special comes from it, right? Something more. Which is great. And again, every year it's interesting to see what happens. I will say that one of the things this past year that was interesting, one of the themes that came up over and over and over again was suicide and depression. And I will admit that was kind of a troubling thing, because as we're going through the programming stage, typically, there are films about suicide or depression, these types of things, but never to the degree that they were submitted in 2020 for 2021. I mean, we were just inundated with so many films about suicide that featured suicide, were discussing suicide. I mean, we were able to program a handful of them, but in truth it almost became too much, right? It was just like, this is a lot. And so that was kind of troubling this year to see that theme come out of the submission pool, when normally we don't see numbers in that level, around that topic as high. But
Yeah, well, it was a rough year last year, man.
it was.
And it's funny because like there were so many people last year in 2020 who were writing COVID scripts and making COVID movies. And we actually did an episode. I made a film in isolation, and then it was like showing people how you can make a film without, kind of anything in your bedroom or something. And I think all that creativity that came out is great. But the problem is now nobody actually wants to see any of those films or make those films because we've seen it in real life. But I like some of these film festivals that have like a sort of had a quarantine category or something like that. Just kind of let people get it out. And that is like, well, we got 20 films about suicide. Have that with some popcorn, kids.
Right,
right. It's a tough pill to swallow. Forgive the metaphor. In terms of what you did last year and what you're doing this year, how are you guys sort of? Are you going to do a blend of in-person and virtual? Like, do you have films online as well, and is that open to the public, or how is that going to work for this year?
So last year, when I think back to 2020, we had all of our hopes and dreams set back in early, January and February. We were really gearing up for kind of our normal big indoor, this giant theater and all this kind of stuff. And then, of course, COVID happened, and we had to reschedule everything. We pushed it back until October. Usually the festival runs in May. We pushed it back to October, thinking, okay, whatever this is, COVID, whatever, is going to be over by then. We'll have a regular event. But of course, as the summer progressed, it became obvious that we were not going to be able to run any sort of indoor event. And so we ended up shifting over to a drive-in event, and also a virtual festival. So we decided to, have the drive-in event for locals and filmmakers who are willing to make the trip. And then we decided to kind of enter into this virtual festival platform space and create that out. And what we saw in 2020 was a really amazing turnout, both at the drive-in and through our virtual channels. I saw a lot of engagement with the virtual programming. And so as we moved into 2021, still kind of unsure as to what COVID was going to do to us, decided first and foremost to shift our normal typical indoor event to an outdoor summer arts festival. So we moved it to June, and we are essentially hosting outdoor screenings. They're under a tent. We're having live music, an artisan craft village, a variety of family fun activities, so splatter painting and all this kind of stuff, as a way to kind of embrace the outdoor feel of it. And try to do this in I guess the safest way possible, where people feel comfortable attending. And then, of course, the drive-in movies are back as well. But immediately following that, we are going to do the virtual festival again. Um, First and foremost, I think because for the filmmakers that cannot attend, whether the international filmmakers who can't actually come to the country and attend, we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to participate. But then also, we just saw such an awesome engagement last year in 2020 that we want to continue that on. Now, maybe it was because people were kind of stir crazy at home. I don't know, but we're going to run it again and see what happens with that. And if things are successful, I think we might actually continue with the in-person weekend, kind of kick the event off, and then follow it up with our 2-week virtual festival for people to follow on with films that they enjoyed at the in-person festival, or for people, filmmakers, etc., who can't attend in person, to join in virtually as we move forward. So yeah, and to kind of follow up with that, everything is free. That's another thing in terms of, again, coming back to the original mission of Blackbird. I always was disheartened when I would go to a festival and I was a filmmaker with a film in the festival, and yet I was still being asked to pay a lot of money to attend. And it's kind of like, why can't this be close to free, if not free? And so one of Blackbird's missions is to remain a free event for the community, and for, of course, filmmakers to come, attend, and enjoy. So we really are trying to keep all of our programming open and free to anybody who wants to enjoy it.
You bring up a good point, and I think you guys are not the only one who got the message from last year about virtual, because the hardest part about, well, say, I see it from both sides, because like if you're a film festival, of course you want to have a live event. Of course you want to see people. Of course you want to get the, if you're there like you guys, it's city festivals are a little bit different. Like there's a lot of festivals here, and of course there's a lot of creators here. But for you guys, it's probably a bigger event just because you don't have as many of them, I would imagine. So it's great to have that live event, and it's great for the filmmakers too, because you want to be in there and you want to like hear the people laugh or cry or whatever, that get that immediate feedback, which is why we make films in the first place. But I think what people learned from last year is like now, particularly with streaming, it becoming like so accessible, it's easier and easier to stream. So why not broaden your audience exponentially and open it up to the world, basically, instead of trying to make everybody come to you? And I think that's probably gonna be part of film festivals maybe from now on. So you guys are in Cortland, so you're up near close to Syracuse. Do you get a lot of people traveling to you normally?
We do. And that was, that was kind of one of the, when we first started out way back in 2015, that was kind of one of the mysteries. Like, okay, like we'll open this up to our local community, and like, I don't know, maybe some filmmakers will show up. We'll invite them. But, in truth, I wasn't really expecting, as a first year festival. And like, it was pretty low key when I think back to what we were running in 2015, a lot of the same kind of thematic programming, whatever, but it was small. And sure enough, we had a ton of filmmakers show up. And I thought to myself, like, my God, like, wow, filmmakers will actually come to this stuff. And so then we really started, since that time, 2016, 2017, 2018, really ramping up our support of filmmakers. And still, we have a lot of goals we're hoping to get to in the next couple of years with this, in ways that we can support filmmakers more and more and more. But we do have a really awesome group that always comes every single year. If we accept 100 films, I would say at least 50% or more of those filmmakers are coming with cast, crew, etc. And the interesting thing about it is, because, and it's kind of funny how this works out, Cortland is relatively isolated, right? To get to Cortland, you've got to fly into Syracuse. It's a 30-minute drive down there. But because of that, what we find is filmmakers are not popping in and popping out. Rather, they're showing up at the start of the festival and staying the entire weekend, kind of in this isolated town, in a way that forces them, in a good way, to really get to know each other. And I feel like every year we have a really strong cohort of filmmakers that come to the festival and stay from start to finish, spend every waking second with each other. And by the time they leave, they're, seemingly pretty good friends, collaborators, etc. I've heard a lot of wonderful stories over the years of filmmakers meeting one another at Blackbird, forming a really strong connection, going on to work together, or I've even heard of stories of filmmakers moving to the, making a giant move from California to Atlanta or something along those lines. So it's really kind of interesting to see that happening, right? You wouldn't think that it would, but it does. Every single year we see that. And already as we gear up for 2021, of course, we've been sending out our RSVPs. And again, it seems we're going to have another large group of filmmakers coming and participating, weekend long through this. So every year we try to ramp up as many networking opportunities and kind of get to know you events as we can to really try and help filmmakers create those lasting connections that when they leave Blackbird, it's kind of like they're carrying something with them, onto wherever they're going. I think the virtual festival in truth helps with that, because after the weekend, then they can also participate in virtual events and kind of continue to keep those connections going with the people they met in person.
I've been asking people, I've asked several festival directors this question, but what advice would you give people looking to, maybe get into the festival circuit and sort of navigate the waters 2021, 2022?
I guess the first thing I would say, and I don't know how close to COVID and pandemic-y this is, but the one of the main submission platforms that people are using is, of course, Film Freeway, and there are others. I'm not saying that's the only one, but one of the things I have noticed, since in 2015, Blackbird created a Film Freeway account, and back in the day, there weren't. I mean, there were film festivals on there, but it wasn't so crowded. Now in 2021, it is a disaster. I mean, you go to submit a film on Film Freeway, and there are so many festivals that are listed there. It becomes impossible to know what you're submitting to, and it's kind of a shame. And I'm not saying, of course, I'm not saying that all these festivals are cutting corners or doing this, but I will say that as a filmmaker myself, submitting to it becomes very challenging to go through, and you've got all these first year festivals that all they have in terms of references is a Facebook page that doesn't have, it's only got stock images of a theater or whatever. Very difficult to verify what is happening. If this is a legit festival, or if this is something that somebody's running, out of their living room and they're just running an online thing. So what I guess the advice that I would give to filmmakers looking to enter into the festival circuit now is, really do your homework and try to, research festivals before you submit to them. Because I'm sad to say that so many festivals now listed on Film Freeway and around just seem to be this kind of money grab for submissions, where you pay and then the next thing you know, you receive an instant selection laurel, maybe a week or two later. And that's it, nothing happens with it. And so, I think referencing the reviews are really good, making sure that you're going down the rabbit hole, right? Checking any sort of websites and doing your research and making sure that these festivals actually exist and that they are kind of taking your film, taking you, and taking everything you're submitting very seriously when you submit. Beyond that, it's hard to give advice in terms of how to best do this. I know for Blackbird's purposes, again, we typically program, films that are 10 to 15 minutes. I'd say that's a sweet spot. But again, that's also because I think that we also receive a lot of 10 to 15 minute films. And so ultimately that's the biggest kind of category we have to choose from. So it's no surprise that that's where we're pulling most of our films from. But I also think, there's no harm in reaching out to a festival and introducing yourself, saying hello, who knows at what stage of the selection process they're in or who your email is going to or whatever, but it might be worth something. I also think that one of the big things you could do is attend, right? If there's a film festival you really want to be a part of, I mean, aside from, Sundance or whatever, something that's a little bit smaller, you can, attend that festival, make yourself known to filmmakers, make yourself known to the festival organizers, that may go somewhere as well. It also, I think, help you decide, is this the festival I want to submit to or not? And so, yeah, I guess those would be my tips in terms of submitting to festivals these days.
Yeah, doing the research, and then I would say, just talking to people who have been there,
Yeah.
like been on the festival circuit. Hey, where did you submit your film? Or just kind of, follow somebody maybe with a similar project and see where they've had success submitting, and look at, where those festivals have, what they program, and, like doing, like you said, during the research is huge. But yeah, you're right. It's, like you look at Film Freeway and it's like, wow, there's so many film festivals out there. And then it really is, what's legit. And then I think more so like what's right for my film. That's usually the biggest one. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. But for people who want to submit, or people for next year, or people who want to attend this year, where can they find you guys on the web?
Just blackbirdfilmfest.com. That'll take you right there. And we've got all of our information available. And of course, would love to have you join us. In terms of the online festival, that's also going to be available at blackbirdfilmfest.com as well. There will be a link that's currently being set up, but once it's set up, probably early June, you'll be able to go there, create a free account, and have access to all the stuff, all the films, and any sort of recordings, meetings, panels, etc. that we're running.
Thanks so much for coming on the show, and we hope to have you back in the future, maybe when things are more normal. And then if I ever find myself upstate New York, I'll have to stop by and pay a visit.
That'd be great.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for doing this.
All right, thanks, Jason. I really appreciate it.
And that's all we have time for today. Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, including our movie reviews, visit our website, norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Once again, I'd like to thank my guest, Sam Avery, and our sponsor, JMR Rentals. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.